Podcasting from the Lone Star State in Southern California, you're listening to the Coma Podcast with Cody and Matt.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Friday show. It's been a little while since we've been here, but we're here today, and that's all that matters. So basically, there's been a lot that's happened over the last month on my side of things, and I'm sure on your side of things. Mostly me.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, it is actually not me.
Hey, Chris.
So this is actually the first time I've seen Cody in a month. We
It
have
has been-
talked, but that's it. We have not FaceTimed. We have not met for recording. We have not been able to release any new episodes. We haven't even recorded any new episodes, this is the longest period of time in 4.5 years that we've known each other that we haven't at least somehow seen each other.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even recognize Matt when he came on camera. I was like, wait, who is this? I was like, oh, okay, yes, that's who it is. Yeah, it's been a while, but we are glad to be here today. And Chris, yes, we missed you so much. Yeah, most of it was me, as Matt was saying, this time. Actually, it was funny because I don't even remember when the last episode was released, but I think the beginning of March was going to be our next episode. And the actual episode, Matt, that was scheduled to be released, because we do have somewhat of a little schedule, because we did record some episodes and they're still there and they're going to be coming out. But the episode
we just haven't even been here, so usually we won't release something if we're not available soon after to talk about it, just in case it generates something we should talk about.
The episode that was scheduled to be released actually was an episode that we recorded where we talked about my anxiety.
The irony behind this. So Cody, do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to
do
you want me to talk about it with you and bring it up?
We can do that, yeah.
Do you want me to start, or you?
Go ahead.
So we talk pretty openly. This is just such a good episode to talk about. So we recorded an episode where we talk about Cody's anxiety, and you guys see it sometimes on the podcast. You'll see kind of where he kind of withdraws and where he's there and he's excited to be here, but he's had a rough day. And, a lot of us experience and suffer from anxiety. And a lot of times Justin, his partner, is the only one that really sees the full effects. And then, of course, Gabe, if he's home. And then next would be like kind of the next group, which would include me, his family, people that aren't right there, but we know something's up. So I don't really want to talk about like the things I see I'm not trying to put you out there because it's not a bad thing. It just is. Yeah. But you can kind of see when Cody's hitting a breaking point with certain topics that trigger him. And you could tell it was there. So before this started, in order to take ComaCast pressure off Cody and pressure off me for school, we probably got together, recorded 10 or 15 different things. And that's a lot of time. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of editing on top of his other projects, on top of, he manages everything right now around the house. So, Cody does everything right now. So you can kind of see where Cody started to splinter a little. And we talked pretty openly about it. And in the episode, it was really interesting that we recorded this, and then we recorded this in January, right? That was when we recorded
like mid-January.
A couple months ago. And we said it was slated to come out, I think this month, right? Like about 3 weeks ago. And we didn't release it.
It was the next scheduled episode.
Yeah. So then I stopped hearing from Cody very much, it was enough for me to notice in the middle of a multiple exam schedule. Like, if you guys know how I am during nursing school, it's been really stressful, but I do my best to still know what's going on. And I've also not been well. I've been kind of dealing with my own body. Like, literally, this thing is like the worst. It's like the IHOP on the rough side of town, like the lights are on, but who gives a shit, but in this, I am noticing that Cody is not talking at all. Like, at all. I'm hearing nothing. I'm getting one-word responses. He'll ask me how I'm doing. Like, he'll text me. You would send me a text and say, "Hey, how's your school day going? Are you okay?" And I'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm here. I have a pulse. Yay." how are you? What's going on? And I would get no answer, which is really unusual. It's a very, very unusual thing. And then that brings us up to Cody then starting to do something that we have talked about, I think, at length. I'll let you share all that part, but Cody and I
Yeah.
have talked about, he's told me the different options for his anxiety that he's thought about, things he considers, and I I've written extensively about it. Like, part of psych and graduating psych is that you have to pick topics and write about them, not to pick a side per se, but to
Hmm.
write about pros and cons. And for anxiety, there's a lot of different therapies and techniques for it, depending on what your anxiety is, what your triggers are, and how you are. Some people's goals are just to bury it, and some people learn to just kind of live with it on the bad days. Like, my personal goal was not to hide it. My personal goal was to learn to be open about it and live with it. And it's just, I'm just me, and it's one whole part of me, not something I have to hide from everybody.
Yeah.
And which can be a little overwhelming because I'm just on my bad days, which don't get seen on camera, but you'll see them in a record. You're more likely to see it on a YouTube recording because we open the camera and we start talking. And I haven't had a chance, if I'm having a really bad day, sometimes the first 20, 30 minutes is me like decompressing. And then it's the same for Cody. So Cody's kind of went front and center this month.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it was like February was pretty good. It was a pretty good month. It'd been a while. And like, we actually talked about the episode, and we are going to release that episode, and we'll talk about more. We're going to do a secondary episode to that, but we will release that episode coming up next week. But I, when we recorded that episode, we had talked about how in general I had been doing fairly well. There would be like tiny bouts of just anxiety, but I could kind of get out of my head, and it was fine. But it had been a long time since it was a very strong, intense bout of anxiety. And so February was chugging along, and then all of a sudden it decided to hit me. I have, and I think we talked about it in that episode, but I have an issue with I you could probably call it. I think when I've been, because I have a bad habit of researching things. But I think actually there is a thing for it. It's called like health OCD, and it's where you basically become obsessive about looking things up about your health, and even if you're completely healthy and you find something wrong. And so in my circumstances, there was something that happened, and I took it into my head, and I go to extreme levels. And so that brought on my anxiety. And basically, I thought I was dying. And when you actually think about it, I was like, I'm not dying. But at the moment, I was dying. And so what happens with my anxiety, it just builds on itself like a snowball. And normally I can get out of it by talking to Justin or talking to Matt and get myself out of it. In this case, that was not going to happen.
If we
It
can
did not
get you to
happen.
talk out loud, it seems like you'll it at least takes the edge off the fire, and then you can talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of like talk your way through the whole episode. But I can definitely tell, um, you know, when Justin's work is super crazy and my school's super crazy, you kind of have almost indicated to me that you feel like you're being a burden to us, or at least to me, and that you don't want to share it. So you try to internalize all of it and text it rather than you need to say it out loud. And um, I can tell you you're not a burden all day long, but that doesn't change how you feel about it, because obviously very well I'm stressed and scared, and I had a really bad January, and that led right into February, and it didn't calm down until like mid-March, and Cody's just sitting here like simmering. And um to elaborate on, so you and I've talked about the medical thing before, because I think
Mhm.
I really want everybody to see what I see and what you are trying to explain to them. Because one comment I have gotten over the years we've done this is that Cody doesn't really share. You're very careful. You're so careful about how you share that it's been noticed. And of course, all people that you chose to do this with, unfortunately for you. But um so can we give well, I don't want to use an example for you because I don't want to send you off in the Never Never Land, but we sometimes will joke about disabling Cody's Google search. So if y'all know what mitochondria is, it's like I try to make it a way people will completely understand how serious it gets in your head, because it is not like, oh, this scratch is an infection, I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
it's more of like something that like
So
a, oh, the skin, the mole,
okay,
that
so
something
yeah, so
resolved. Let's talk about something resolved.
my last big, I would say my last big super extreme
That's
level
the
of
one that is that
anxiety.
the last one, Cody? That's the one that I remember where
Yeah,
you
that was
were.
a, I mean,
That one was
I have
rough.
small ones here and there, and but then like Matt said, we talk it through, either me talking to him or Justin or Gabe or whatever, and it doesn't last very long. And those are something I can get out of. The one that happened in I believe 2019. So I had a spot on my arm that looked weird, and it was like, I guess it was changing, growing, whatever. There was something going on, and obviously I freak out, and so like I immediately think it's like skin cancer, and basically probably that it's spread everywhere and whatever. So in my case, I go to the most extreme thing that is absolutely possible. So like if you were just a normal person, you probably see that, you'd be like, oh, probably you wouldn't even think about it or go to the doctor. But if you were someone who was a little concerned, you would just go to the doctor, and then you let the doctor make the determination of what it is, or if you should be worried or not worried about it. And if it was something, you would just go to the next step. And even then, it's probably not that big of a deal. But again, I go to the most extreme level, and it was, I have skin cancer and whatever else, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. It builds on itself, and then in that particular case, when my anxiety hits, then like I start losing weight like rapidly. And I actually sent Matt a screenshot of my weight from that
He
period of
stops
time,
eating out of stress. His
and it
body, he
just
starts to almost
drops.
mimic the stress. So anxiety, if you've never experienced anxiety, it just overtakes your whole body. And the more you internalize it, the harder it gets. And sometimes it's a cross between, for example, if you're the Justin or the me in the situation, it's a balancing act of listening, because you never want to tell somebody what to think and what to feel, but at the same time being honest. So when Cody asked me, does this look like something I should be concerned about? My answer was, no, you're a fair skinned half Mexican dude from Texas.
Yeah,
No. But if it makes you feel better, go have the doctor look at it, because usually that is the way to kind of help Cody through it. That, you know what, if you are concerned about it, like Cody said, a reasonable person, if you have a medical concern, go to your doctor or dermatologist and let them look at it, and they'll make a determination. And they'll be honest, you know, they're going to tell
yeah.
you. Most of the time, that really does work. But sometimes it doesn't. And especially if it follows an event of something really stressful. So it can be harder to get him to kind of let go of it. And definitely TV producer Cody kicks in. So it ends up,
Well,
he kind of will project it into, for example, if we're working on the Coma cast and we're talking about a topic and Cody's being very black and white about it, I can tell that he's stressed about something else because he's trying to control what's happening in front of him. And I am the worst person to be around at that point, because I'm still like, look, I know you're upset, but on this topic, we have to separate. But he has to, he's living with that in his head and still trying to do everything else. And when we're off camera, we very much talk about it. Like Cody and I have definitely, you've seen us get heated on camera. Just so FYI, before and after we do talk, because we definitely separate whatever topics we're talking about to make sure after that he's okay, because his anxiety can run his life. And as his friend, if I put him in a position where he feels I'm not approachable, I've just created one more important space to him that he can't be himself.
yeah. I mean, in that episode that y'all get to hear, we do talk about that early on in relationships that I have, that that is a worry when I talk about my anxiety, that I'm bothering someone. Because the other thing with my anxiety, I repeat the same thing a lot and a lot, and that's just like my process of getting it out. I have to speak it and then process it, and then whoever I'm talking to, whether it's Justin or Matt or Gabe or whoever, then they're like, they give their side in response to whatever I'm worried or concerned about, and then I probably say it again, and it's just a back and forth a bit, and then usually it resolves itself ultimately. But yeah, but in this case with them, I've learned that I'm not a bother, I'm not like an annoyance or whatever. But that is something with anxiety in general that a lot of people do have, that they feel like they become a burden to people, or they become annoying to people because
Right.
in talking about their anxiety. And so that is a normal thing. And it is important to know that if you have close people around you, that you aren't a
You're
burden
not a burden.
to them.
I think most of the people that listen to this podcast, several of them are real life friends of mine. Like, for example, Chris and I have known each other since we were 19. And he can tell you that this is a conversation that he and I have had at length over many years. Chris, when my anxiety is bad, I stop eating and I gain weight. What the hell? It's because if you don't eat consistently or what's going on, your body thinks it's starving, and then everything you do eat immediately stores to fat. And that's what's happening, Chris, just to answer that question for you. But it can be what the fuck was that? Oh. Sorry. I forgot Keith was outside, and I just heard the back door like kick open.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
Holly.
the crazy thing with anxiety is, and over the period of time that I've always had anxiety, and going back, I ultimately remember, and I think I talked about this in the episode, to like second grade is the first time I really start noticing things. But the crazy thing with anxiety is that it can create so many health issues, ultimately, especially if
Yes.
it's long term and you don't take care of it. Also, though, it can trigger short term things that can make you think there are other issues. And I talked about in that episode
Yeah.
before I moved to San Diego. I had like numbness in my fingers and my toes on one side. And
Oh
I
gosh,
did
you
go to
thought you
the
were having
doctor.
literally having a stroke.
Yeah, well, at that time again, I go to worst case scenario. I thought that I had a brain tumor. Um,
Oh,
but that
well,
ultimately is tied to when I was younger. I heard my parents talking about my grandfather had numbness in his hands or something, and ultimately it was a brain tumor for him.
yeah.
But that's
That's funny
different
that you mentioned
because
that. They run in my brain aneurysms run in my family, like my mom, my great uncle, and my aunt, and cut and like a cousin or something.
yeah,
So I get that too, and I actually have to be checked for it. I'm supposed to be checked for it annually. So sometimes talking to Cody, you have to be, and you have to be honest. By the way, there is no, you cannot talk to another adult the way you talk to a 12-year-old. You have to be aware that the person you're talking to is knowledgeable and capable of research. There's a lot of times you don't comprehend that I might already know about the topic, and nothing I say, Cody's like, no, this is the. I'm like, that's from like 2010, Cody. That's not accurate. But there is no rationalizing. He has already made up his mind. Even if he knows, he'll even tell me, you've even told me, I'm being irrational right now, but you have to still be honest with me.
yeah. I mean,
Because
that's one of the things
you
that
can't cave to the, when he tells you he's being irrational, you can't cave to the irrationality. You have to just kind of say, no, no, this is where it's at. You're here, but you have to let him work this out and get himself back to here. You can't fix it for him
yeah. I mean,
or
like
anybody, really.
in this most recent bout, basically, I thought something was wrong, and then obviously then my weight started going down, which then it's like, oh my gosh, something is wrong for real because my weight is going down.
Because
Um,
he's not eating.
and because I was changing also what I was eating. So, when I was eating more high fiber foods or fruits and different things like that. And obviously that's different than like eating fast food and like junk food and sweets, like a lot. And also in February, I didn't drink a soda at all in February. I didn't get to tell everybody that, but I did not drink a whole soda for all of
Yeah,
February.
we're like 4 or 5 weeks completely off here.
But that built on itself. But ultimately, like, it was so extreme, and I think I had told Matt this, like, it had been building a little bit, and then finally there was like I think it was a Monday or Tuesday. I was like taking a shower, because Justin was like, get up, take a shower, get dressed, change clothes, and kind of like
Been
help
there.
your mindset. And
Yeah.
so obviously that also works if you have anxiety and or depression. But so I was doing that, and then I was in the shower, and I was just like, I can't. Like I would, it was so much extreme, tense things, and everything was making me tense. Like Ella was waking up in the middle of the night, crying and doing things, and I didn't want her to wake Justin or whatever, and so then that is making my stomach so tense. I'm just getting so intense, and everything is making me irritated with because she's just acting up a lot. She was acting up a lot during this period, by the way.
Because somebody
she,
else was super stressed too, by the
she
way.
has since calmed down, and our sleep schedule was really weird. But yeah, so it was too extreme, and I was like, I can't do this. So I messaged my doctor, and I'm like, okay, so I'm having a lot of anxiety. It's messing up my stomach. Uh, whatever. I was like, obviously in the past you've given me Xanax, and is there something that we can do? Is there some medicine I can take or whatever? I was like, I've already been doing like some CBT stuff, the cognitive behavioral therapy, and I have some apps that I can use that use AI that kind of help a little bit, and those help in my if I just have a bit of anxiety. But in this case, it was so extreme, even though the little apps weren't working. Anyway, I sent her the letter. She calls back and schedules an appointment. We have that's the thing that sucked, but at least it was less than a week, but it still had to wait a handful of days. But she calls me and calls me
Yeah.
actually earlier than the scheduled appointment, which was nice. Um, and she asked me a handful of questions. Obviously, I had to fill out a questionnaire beforehand that talked about my anxiety and what I was feeling and whatever. And basically, it was pretty easy and quick, and I was relaxed and calm afterwards. I did feel like at that point it was like I always get nervous before anything big happens, and so like before that appointment, I was a little bit more on
Ooh.
edge. But then afterwards, um, she basically was like, "Well, I can put you on a low dose of Zoloft, and we can see how that works for you and helps out." And so then I immediately went and got the prescription, and I started taking it that day, and I've been on it for like this week was 3 weeks, so it's been
I was
three and
gonna
a
say, it
half
sounds about, I think about
weeks.
3 weeks.
3.5 weeks. Tuesday would have been 3 weeks. And so the first day I took it, or the first night, who knows, probably partially placebo, partially maybe felt something, but I just felt like a little bit happier. But I think it was also just relief, like
Taking
something.
some kind of step for yourself is such a relieving feeling, no matter what it is. Just having a plan, having an action plan, having something that you're trying, even if you're not sure if it's going to work, just something can be such a big deal. And I would say it's probably about a week ago before you started to like text again.
It was
I've gotten one cat picture in 6 weeks. Okay, that's that.
yeah,
Like, I
I
don't. You guys have to understand like how our friendship works to understand what that means. He has not watched a Hallmark movie that he's told me about in probably 2.5 months.
haven't.
I've gotten one cat picture. It was a Salem. I've gotten no Ella pictures, no Ella updates,
You
nothing.
know,
I
it's
had no idea she
interesting.
was misbehaving. Yeah, like, does
uh,
that tell you how stressed?
I well, I had previously gotten Xanax, mostly for flying because I was flying back to Texas.
Oh Lord,
I think that
forgot
was
about.
before COVID. I think it was before COVID. Yeah, it was before COVID because I actually uh, had
You
gotten the
got 6 of
prescription
them.
for Xanax. She didn't give me a lot. There's a
She
whole.
gave you
I have an
6 of
issue.
them.
Yeah, I have an issue,
I
but
still
we won't even talk
remember
about
this.
that. So I went and got the prescription because I was like, okay, I'm going to be flying. I get super, like, I'll be throwing up before I go to the airport. It happens every time. It's always happened, whatever. And it's not that big of a worry, but I was like, well, let's try this. This could help me. Anyway, I'd gotten that medicine. Justin was not feeling well. I came home from seeing the doctor, getting my medicine. He was still not doing well, and that's when his heart was like really fast, and he had a fever, and his blood pressure was high, and whatever. And that's when we had to go to the emergency room. I think I maybe only mentioned this once, and that was a very, very scary moment. But I remember I was
So
messaging Matt back and forth because it was just like I I was just going crazy. And I
yes,
think at the
this
time he was
was
like, take a Xanax, but I didn't have him with me.
I'm in
And
the
then
middle of Planet Fitness, and David is on the bench next to me, and I'm like, I think I have to go to California this afternoon,
I
like,
did.
and because
I asked Matt.
well, before you actually asked me, because I was reading your text to David in the gym, I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to go to California. I mean, I think I'm gonna actually have to go because, um, if Cody doesn't like die of stress, Justin's going to kill him. So I'm going to have to go. Like, and then I think about 10 minutes later, you're like, hey. Are you free? Do you think you can come out here this weekend? And I was like, I will come out today. I was like, I will literally go home and pack my bag. I will be there in 3 hours. But the, so Cody describing, so for example, those are the symptoms that he just described to you. He just wasn't feeling well. And Cody was like a 15 out of 10. And it was a very challenging moment because we've talked about this before. I think I asked you a question. I was like, have you ever been roasted by your family? Or like the way you describe things, you haven't been challenged in certain ways that a lot of us have been, not out of avoidance. You just had a functional family that are fairly healthy. You just kind of lucked out there, which is really good. It just so when shit has happened, it's kind of thrown you for a loop and you have no way to deal with it because you're 1,500 miles away from anybody else that would be able to be like, Cody, it's all right. Like, it's all right,
Yeah.
just let it play out. But he absolutely would not let it play out. I'm like, Cody, those are things that happen when you don't feel good. Your blood pressure goes up because you're stressed and you don't feel good. You
Yeah.
know, it's like when you cut your finger, you're like, ah, damn, your blood pressure goes up, your pulse increases. And he's describing totally normal things to me. And I'm like, Cody, those are normal things. You please breathe. Don't get thrown out of this emergency room. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
just remember that he was then afterwards. There's been other moments where Matt has been like, "Take a Xanax, take a
I was
Xanax."
like that when I was like, I need you to take a Xanax and speak calmly to me because it was getting to the point where I kind of couldn't understand what he's telling. Because I am listening. Because should Cody tell me a symptom or something the doctor is saying that is like, oh, okay, they do need an extra set of hands. I will come out there. All right, I'm on the way. Um, but that isn't what happened. And Cody's telling me things. I'm like, okay, he doesn't feel good, but basically he needs fluids and to relax. I mean,
Yeah.
he went and got Taco Bell right after and didn't follow the doctor's orders. And you were like, he doesn't feel good. I'm like, because he ate Taco Bell when he's supposed to be eating like toast, you know?
Yeah.
And
So
I'm like,
I
oh, please take a Xanax and call me in 30 minutes.
um so yeah, so in this instance I finally got my medicine, and so like I had texted Matt afterwards and I was like, okay, so she's gonna put me on Zoloft. I'm actually gonna take it. Obviously, Xanax is a temporary situation. And so it's something you don't want to take long term because it can be addicting. And so these other medicines like this are more of a long term solution, along with some other things. But so then I started taking it, and like I said, the first day I felt like okay-ish, and then I took it the second day, and like I will tell you, I woke up in the middle of the night, or man, it was in the middle of the night, but it was like 5, 6. Justin was getting ready for work, showering and stuff. And like I just like woke up, like I was wide awake all of a sudden. But it felt like I was just like not in control of my thinking and whatever. And
Oh,
so
God.
I had to get up and like walk and pace the room for a minute, and like I looked outside, and ultimately that can be a small side effect initially, as your body chemicals and everything are just like, but so then I was afraid to take it the third night, and I was like, okay, I'm just not going to take it. I'm feeling better now. Justin was like, take it. I took it. Everything was fine. So then I
I'm just
continued.
picturing Justin like, no.
So I continued taking it. And then, you can have side effects. There's multiple side effects. They can be long lasting side effects, temporary side effects, mostly temporary side effects. I think the only one that I've had that has been like, it's not bad, but some people sometimes will have a hard time sleeping. But for me, it's not that I have a hard time sleeping, But if something wakes me up or I wake up, then I am like literally wide awake. It's not like a gentle, like you waking up. Like I'm wide
Ha!
awake and I can't go back to sleep. So it's really annoying because Ella, she's like, I want food. So I have
And
to
you're
get
up.
up and get her food. And then I'm
Yeah.
up for a
My
bit.
meds caused
But
that. I would just 4 or 5 hours, and my eyes would just poof, and I was like, I'm awake. And then about 4 hours later, I would need to sleep for an hour or two, like take a nap, and
yeah.
then I was good for the day. It was weird. It was a
Uh,
weird wake up. I've never experienced that before, and I'd like to not.
so yeah, so then I started taking medicine and I told Matt, and so now it's been 3 weeks. I will tell you, like after like I would say maybe after the first week, I started you it's a weird thing. I will tell you, it's a weird feeling in that, after like a week, you start having less anxious feelings, or I did. And I would still really be super anxious in the mornings. And even before that, the mornings were my worst time. That's when I was the most anxious, is the morning periods. And as the day went on, I would always get a little bit better. But after taking the
Right. Well, I
medicine,
think, can you talk about that a little? I know about it, but I think people would be really surprised to know that, because you worked on TV. You literally are used to being on TV. You do this. Like, doing this was nothing. Like, we try to get people to talk on here, they literally run and hide and stop responding to my DMs. Like, but you are used to working on TV, and there will be times when we talk that you haven't gotten out of bed, and I can tell the difference between, you're just like, lazy day for Cody and Ella and Salem,
so
versus Cody's having a day and getting out of bed may not happen. Can you talk a
so
little bit about that?
yeah. Well, okay, so going back to when it first started, it basically started at the last week of February, beginning of March is when my anxiety started hitting. And as Matt was saying, that's when like basically I think anybody, if you follow me on social media, you probably noticed this, but I stopped messaging people a lot. I try to respond to people, but sometimes I didn't get back to them. I quit posting on Twitter. I quit posting on Instagram. If you know me, you know that's weird behavior.
Cody's social media is like literally one of his like chromosomes. Like,
Like on
it is part
Instagram,
of him.
like all of February and end of January, I was posting an outfit of the day. So every day I was posting an outfit of the day. And then comes March, nothing. So all of that began because of my anxiety. I just didn't feel like doing any of that. It wasn't bringing me joy. It felt like a burden to have to like post anything or do anything. Like even towards the end of this, like the late part of March, when I was getting a tiny bit better, but before the medicine and before the doctor. So it was still pretty bad. We actually went out to one of the wineries here that we like in the city for a jazz night. And it was a fun night, but I didn't even post a picture. It was St. Patrick's Day, actually. So it was the middle of March, actually. And they
Now that
had
I think
like,
about that, I don't even think you told me you went, and that's
I
very
probably didn't.
unusual. Like, we us
They, I mean,
like,
they had
we talk
green
to each other
they had green sangria. So you know that I normally would have posted a picture of me with this green sangria for St.
in his
Patrick's Day,
underwear.
because I'm all about holidays. So if I have a green drink and I don't post about it, there's something wrong. But I didn't post about it. But yeah, so I had no drive to do any of that stuff. But then also like waking up, like I didn't want to get out of bed because I just didn't feel like doing anything, like because my head was constantly in a cycle of what was worrying me and I could not get at it. So basically 24/7, I was thinking about what was worrying me and it would not stop. That's all I was thinking about. Nothing could get me out of that. I could go work outside and do some stuff for a little bit, but it was still in the back of my head. And then it would come full force again later on. So laying in the bed, kind of like, uh, and trying to sleep, I guess, it allowed me not to think about it. But even in my sleep, I was thinking about it sometimes. And so it was like just I couldn't win situation in that I didn't want to get up. I didn't feel like editing things. I didn't feel like doing some of my other work that I had to
Yeah,
do. I didn't feel like cleaning the house. I didn't feel like going and watering the plants outside. All the things that I normally
I
love and
can't
enjoy
express to you guys how
doing.
not Cody that is. Like, these are things that our daily, like, this is part of our daily routine of how we interact, and just seeing, and it just silence. Like,
Well, you
just
are right. I wasn't even taking pictures of the cats, so I couldn't
yeah.
even send you a picture of the cat.
I've gotten
Like I wasn't
one.
doing anything.
I mean, it's actually been noticeable enough that I've mentioned it to David and Keith several times about, like, man, Cody is something's. Well, he'll come around when he wants to talk to me. Because I am a couple states away. There's nothing I can actually do. And when somebody has anxiety, depending on your comfort level with them, sometimes you have to pick your battle on when you're going to approach it. So Cody and I have always had the rapport. If I ask him, "Hey, are you okay? How are you doing?" He'll tell me. If he doesn't want to talk about it, he's gonna just continue on like normal and not talk about it. And that's the space we allow each other. He's an adult and he knows that he can talk to me. Me saying hi and checking in is like the okay, what's going on? you know. But
Yeah.
sorry for making you relive a whole bunch of this, but
No.
I think one, you don't share a lot. And if there's one thing I can say as your friend of knowing you for 4.5 years, I think for as public as you are, you're very careful about what you do and don't share. And it's almost, I don't know if it's anxiety, your preference for what you want as a social, like what you want the world to see, good or bad. Or, if it's just that you just don't feel comfortable sharing, or you just don't want to feel like you're going to let somebody see something that maybe you didn't want them to see. And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well, obviously everybody knows uh who's here and probably who's listening, that people or everything that you see on social media is heavily curated to what someone wants you to see of
unless
them.
you're me.
Unless you're Matt.
But,
Most people's
but that's the
lives are not
problem.
as glamorous as they like put online.
Oh,
It's a
yeah. But I
polished
mean, I think
thing.
everyone knows
But
that. And you've never given off the edge of this glamorous, unreachable lifestyle, despite your borderline concerning obsession for royalty and celebrities. But I will tell you, how I knew something was wrong? Brittany literally announced a pregnancy and Cody didn't text me. I was like, this is fucking weird.
there's a
But
lot that happened in March, I
yeah, a
feel
lot has
like,
happened
celebrity
that we haven't
wise.
talked about.
Chris
Um,
Rock. I
and
didn't talk about that to Matt either.
we're not going to talk about that on the podcast, by the way.
But that's something I would have messaged you. And I
Oh,
didn't I
yeah.
didn't at all.
I mean, oh my God, I was expecting a text from you and you didn't. I'm like, something's real wrong. But it's something that all these things that you see, like all these positive, like I know Cody's posts are usually your posts are very cheerful. They're very like, look at this, I'm making that. This is a project. Those are all very genuine things about you. You're always working on something. You love doing these things. So that is a real part of you. But you never let anybody see
Yeah,
like
I think
you
I
don't let
think it
anybody see like the force behind it, you know?
I think
Like
it's I don't think it's anything that I do purposefully, but I think working in TV created a process in my head of what I put out, because obviously if you're a news reporter, a news anchor, or whatever, you just naturally are not going to put out certain things or post about certain things. Many times safety issues, because
oh well yeah,
you're in a
that's some
public
creepy shit.
facing business that the public, and we've mentioned this before on some things, they think they know you, they think you're their best friend. And that I would have people stop me I would be getting gas and going in to pay, or like getting a drink at the convenience store, and people would just like start talking to me or yell my name from across the convenience store. And so I
Really
think
weird to hear outside of the orgy, isn't it, Cody? Like when the lights are back on after and you have to find your shoes and your undies. I know.
no, it's more like, let's see if I can do it. It's like, this is normally be like, um so yeah, so I think that a lot of it is that I naturally I've just picked up a certain like thing from being in TV, and that
Sometimes
I
I wish
just
people
don't
could
put
see
things
our
out.
behind the scenes stuff, like how we do that, because I wouldn't say it's something that sets us on edge with each other, but it's very much like when we came together to do this, we had two different schools of thought. I knew I wanted to do this with Cody because Cody knows that although I play a lot and I'm very lighthearted, I take what I do seriously. I take the topics we talk about seriously, and I take Cody very seriously, not as just my friend, but as a professional with he has a lot of experience, and I take that very seriously. But at the same time, I'm also there saying, yes, I want that professionalism, but at the same time, I don't want us to be the unreachable Channel 5 action news. I want I wanted to do this with him and with you because of who you are to me, and that is the chemistry I wanted to show the world and the things that we share and we talk about, because that's what makes it, I think, unique to us, not just to 1.5 white guys, doing this, see what see? And but it's one of those that was just so important to me that when this became a thing, and then we decided to kind of adjust the formats, because a lot of the source material is very triggering. It's very hard to talk about, and it's also things that are happening currently. So trying to be sensitive to world events, but at the same time share these stories and share these things, and also what's happening in our lives. And I got a lot of questions about what's behind the scenes, and I realized we hadn't done a good job of that when people thought you were David for like a year. I was like, oh, okay, maybe we should share. Maybe we okay. But that
Hi,
was
I'm David.
yeah. We add about a foot to your height.
I was gonna like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Honey, I Shrunk the Twink.
Yeah,
The
for
weird
sure.
porn parody. It's like the sequel to Twink Light.
Coming soon.
But sorry for making you again relive that. But I think if a lot of people could see behind the scenes and they see that, like, when you're
Yeah.
joking around, and like the fire and creativity and the frustration as well, and your frustration sometimes with me when I'm like, no, I don't want that, I want this, and you're like,
bitch, no.
Bitch, no. And I'm like, but bitch, yes.
Bitch, do it yourself.
Right. I'm like, okay, 3 dick pics and a whole dick and you'll do it?
Pay up.
I lied. It's 2.
I mean, y'all, that's how we met, right? So yeah, I do think that, that's one thing. When I did come back and started posting on Instagram or Twitter, I guess it's like, I mean, it was about 3 weeks ago. Same about the medicine. I think it was the week I started taking the medicine, and I did post that I'd went to the doctor and I'd gotten some medicine. I was going to start taking the medicine. I do think it's important in talking about that, and that's why we recorded the whole episode about anxiety back in January, because I thought it is important that we talk about anxiety and we talk about the reality of the situation and how it affects friendships and relationships, and that basically you're not alone if you have these feelings. A lot of people have these feelings. I will also say, in talking about this and speaking and talking with other people that I know, there's a lot of people who take Zoloft and other medicines for anxiety or depression. Many people don't speak about it, and each individual is up to how much they feel like they should share about it. But I do think it is important that it's not a rare occurrence. So like,
No, not at all.
if you feel like that you don't want to take medicine or whatever, for whatever reason, it can be very helpful. Even if you're scared about it. I did join a group on Facebook for people who take Zoloft, and a lot of people get the prescription and they don't take it for like months because they're so scared of taking the medicine, because they're anxiety. They're afraid something's going to
that's
happen
really
because
what
if
we
they
went
take
through
it.
with you. I remember
Yeah.
begging you. We did have one night, I can remember being like, I was frustrated enough that I could have cried, because I wasn't frustrated with Cody. It was just, there's a reason I'm a nursing student, but he's my friend, and there's nothing any of us can do for him if he won't at least take a step to try something new. But you have to let the person come to that conclusion themselves. And he's out there in California, away from us. I can't spend that time with him as his friend to let him talk to me about those fears in person and go for a walk, and the things that you really should. Some things just can't be done virtually. And watching him suffer, it was one of the particularly bad episodes. I want to say it was around the time of when Justin went to the hospital and the skin episode. Is that when you say, whenever
Yeah.
you mention the skin episode, I know exactly what you're talking about. That
And
particular episode was really bad.
yeah, it was. I
You
do have a blog post about the skin hole incident on my website, and where I also do talk about that there are virtual things and apps that you can use, and the importance of wearing sunscreen. By the way, nothing was wrong. Ultimately, we didn't ever say this. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong. I forgot to say nothing was wrong. It was like a keratosis, which it is like a semi skin growth, but it's like not bad. It will not turn into something bad. It just happens as you get older. You can have it burned or froze off like I did, but if you didn't, nothing happens. But yeah, nothing was wrong. I forgot to mention that ultimately. Nothing was wrong, but wear sunscreen.
That
I
particular
see so many
episode
people not wearing sunscreen.
I remember that episode probably went on for 3 or 4 weeks, and it was really intense. Yeah. I mean, even just as his friend over here, we recorded, I think, during this time, and it was hard. We were trying to, this is when we were building the Coma Cast. Yeah. We couldn't have a conversation because Cody was so upset 24/7, and he was like, I'm being irrational. I am being this. Mm-hmm. I am bothering you. And I'm like, you're not bothering me. I'm worried about you. Not for your skin, for your brain. Your mental health is suffering, and you're not listening to your doctor. And that was, that's what happened. I remember this part. You came back from the doctor, and they were like, this is what they even told him. This is what it is. We can remove it for you. And you're like, well, I don't think. I'm like, Cody, you are not the expert. I remember saying that. I was like, you are not the doctor. You are not the expert. And I remember asking you, who has to talk to you to make you feel better?
Well,
who?
Well, in that particular instance, so basically AI is really amazing. There's an app that you can get if you are worried about moles or whatever, legit worried about things, there are AI apps now that you can take photos of it, and it's very, very reliable. And so that's something that is important if you're just general health. We always talk about general health.
You want to know how I learned about them? That's the one thing I will say. I always come back somehow more educated when Cody's having an episode. We do end up talking about it.
Yeah, and so there's apps that you don't have to pay for, and you just take a picture, and it'll tell you if you should maybe go see a doctor, or if like, hey, it's fine, which is important. That way, you're not like randomly going to the doctor for something that is like completely not an issue. But there are ones that you can send a photo to an actual dermatologist, and I did do that several times. And I think that's what I was telling Matt. Like they would say, "Oh yeah, it's this. You're fine." And I would be like, oh, I'm still not sure. And then ultimately my doctor, when she actually looked at it in person, said it was the exact same thing that the doctor said virtually.
When you finally went to in person, I remember you started to calm down a bit because you had the virtual appointments. And you were like, no. And I'm like, you're not a dermatologist. But that's all you can say. All you can do is try to kind of, I guess, gently reorient. Not tell them what to think. It's just like, well, you're not the dermatologist. Who has to talk to you for you to listen?
And so that's the one thing with my particular anxiety, and I know there's other people who have similar anxiety, in that you initially you might not even realize it, but as time goes on, you start learning and building what your body, and you feel certain things. Logically, in many of these circumstances, even the most recent time, logically, I'm like, what you're doing and why you're worrying about this thing literally makes zero sense. Like if we're looking at it fact by fact by fact by fact, this does not make sense. So I do now understand logically it doesn't make sense, but I still can't get out of the circle. My brain does not allow me to do that.
Well, especially when you go into the next natural thing is to kind of retreat into your head because you always feel like you're repeating yourself. And I'm like, if you have to tell me 10,000 times and 10,003 makes you feel better, let's go. And I am fearless. I'm like, all right, tell me again. Tell me again, Cody. Let's talk about it. But it's happened. And sometimes, I mean, I feel like sometimes you're just getting mad at me, but then you get mad at me and you forget, and it gets your brain out of it because then you start explaining to me why you're feeling that way. Yeah. And sometimes it is not actually the medical issue. It is something that has bubbled up to the surface. It was triggered by it and we're getting to the root of it. But that's not for me to decide. If Cody says he needs to repeat it, you told me early on our friendship that you can be repetitive with it and that you apologize. I'm like, okay, well, if that's what comes up, that's what comes up. He was telling the truth. That's what comes up. And it's fucking fine.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
know,
you
so
didn't have to
again,
go do anything for you. You literally all you needed was for me to listen.
so I,
That's
you know,
easy.
I finally, went to the doctor, got the medicine, been taking the medicine, like I said. But then another step that I did take, and again, like I say, I think it is important to speak about these things, and I'm going to continue doing that, and like maybe like doing like a series of things and talking on my social media about it on a more regular basis and how I'm feeling, because maybe you can have good days and bad days even if you're on medicine, but don't get down about that, I guess. But one of the other steps that I took was what it's important to talk to people, but why not talk to someone who's a professional who understands this and can actually like give you steps that you can take and work with you one on one, and in helping you get out of these thoughts and these cycles. And so one of the things that I did, I obviously can go to the medical group with that my insurance has. Obviously, it can be a little bit of wait, it seems, in Southern California for a mental health, because at least people are now going, and it's gotten a lot worse because of COVID and people being at home and that causing things. But it's important to go ahead and schedule those things if you are feeling like it. I would encourage everyone to do it because it is very, very helpful. But
It's
uh,
hard. And I will say, if you need help scheduling something because you don't know how it works or you don't want to make that phone call, I will make those phone calls. I can't tell you. I was like, Cody, I will go do this for you. It's sometimes you can't do it for somebody, but if all they need is that like little hand to just kind of pull you forward, let somebody help you. If you need that extra step, if that's what's
mhm.
stopping you is that phone call, text me or Cody. One of us will make that phone call. If there's anything Cody can do, it's make a phone call to make something happen. Like I have
Yeah,
seen.
I so I chose at this point in time not to go through with my insurance in doing this initially. I instead decided to try BetterHelp. I do know it costs some money, so there is that, and that's an unfortunate situation. But I'm testing it out right now, and I would just say anybody who's listening, if you want to try it out, I think this is a really good thing. You can try out BetterHelp for a free month, a full month free. And I will, let's see, I'll put it in the
Can you
chat
put
real
in a
quick.
you put in a chat? Can you put it on our post it to
Yeah, and I'll
Comcast
post
so we
it
can
to
retweet it?
ComaCast. But Justin Bieber is giving BetterHelp away to everybody that is on his concert tour, all of his crew, and everybody who's involved with his tour. He's giving them free subscription to BetterHelp. But he's also spending like $3 million or something dollars for people to sign up for a free month of BetterHelp. So if it's something you just want to test out and see if you even feel comfortable talking with somebody, you can just click on that link and just fill out the information, and you'll just cancel before the month is up. But it's a free month to try it out. And so that's what I was doing. And so I actually yesterday, I guess it was yesterday, I had my first talk session with someone talking about my anxiety. And they also do anxiety and depression, the whole list of things. So if you want to check that out, and they're basically they'll like pair you up with somebody who like fits your thing, and you don't even have to stay with that person. If you don't like them, they'll give you another person to try out. But one of the things is you can choose if you want somebody who's LGBTQ friendly, or who deals with LGBTQ issues, because maybe you have anxiety or depression because of that, or not telling people about being open about who you are, or there's a whole myriad of things. So you can find somebody who can talk with you about that. Or if you have religious beliefs, or you grew up religiously, they'll maybe put you with somebody who can deal with that religious aspects and LGBTQ
Well,
issues,
and
because that
sometimes just
all like
being
merges.
having somebody LGBTQ friendly, even if it's not related to that, can just be so comforting. Like Dr. Jake has taken over a lot of
Mm-hmm.
my medical stuff, for example. Having an LGBTQ doctor has just been life changing, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
like
especially when
it's just so different.
yeah, medical
Don't feel
issues, a
like
big thing.
frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about a little bit in that episode with Dr. Jake about the issues that people in the community feel when talking with their doctor, or the doctor not listening to them, or not even knowing about certain things. We talked about so many doctors don't even know about PrEP. So at this
Well,
point they
you know,
do,
Clint
but
Clint
should.
as a straight guy, he texted me about it. He goes, "I really like that episode. I hope you guys do more of them." And he was talking about how, things he kind of takes for granted at the doctor. And it's like, for us as gay guys, it's kind of a crapshoot of how your doctor's going to respond to you. Whereas Dr. Jake was like, "Let's look at your labs. Okay, you definitely need testosterone because it's been low for like a year and a half. This is why you don't feel good. I am now 3 weeks into treatment, which I haven't even been. Cody, I have like five major things to tell you.
The funny
I just
thing,
realized
Matt,
that.
Matt did tell me he was starting testosterone, and I was like, basically, we're twins because you're starting your medicine and I'm starting my medicine basically at the same time.
Well,
And we won't know
before,
the outcome for a few weeks or
so we're
a
gonna
little
post.
months.
Cody's got the link. We're gonna post it to ComaCast. We'll get it retweeted, and I think we should continue talking. Like, we'll do a few episodes about this, but also let's answer some questions because we had some
Yeah.
comments on the side, and I'm
Let
sorry
me
we haven't. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Cody. I'm
let
sorry.
me just real quick. So I did have my first session in speaking with the lady, and she's very nice and very sweet, and it was a great conversation. I was really nervous and worried about it beforehand because like I didn't know what to expect. Most people when they talk about therapy, they only see what they see in movies or TV shows, which is somewhat
Right.
realistic, but it's a little exaggerated at times. But you still are nervous about talking to someone about your whole personal life and like opening up to who you are. But they're professionals, and that's why I think it's important to have someone who's LGBT friendly, because maybe you don't realize there's something connected with your LGBTQ personality and your maybe something you're hiding or whatever. They're able to bring that out. But in the conversation, basically, I'll go ahead and say this. So she basically, we were talking, and
Oh,
she
you're
was
gonna tell
trying,
them. Okay.
yeah, she was trying to figure out what was causing my anxiety, and I was saying certain things and doing certain things. We're about 30-40 minutes in, and more conversation and me saying certain things, and then she's like, okay, this is making more sense now. Because at first I was thinking, well, where is he going with this? Like what, like she was trying to figure out what was causing it, and it wasn't making any sense because certain things weren't, I guess, adding up. But then as we had more conversation, it all started going together. And ultimately, I don't think any of this is a surprise. I told Gabe, and Justin wasn't surprised. I don't know if I fully told Matt everything, but I don't think he was surprised at some of this stuff. So basically, a fear of death. Okay, that's not surprising. That adds up into things. Uh, that I have a issue of the unknown. If there's something that's unknown, it's going to cause anxiety and worry. So that would be health issues. That would be flying on an airplane. That would be getting a new job. That would be whatever. It's the fear of what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. That caused me anxiety. Uh, it was, she did ask me, she was like, you don't seem like the kind of person who has control issues in a relationship, but do you have control issues outside of relationships? And I was like, so okay, uh, it makes sense now, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. And I was like, I guess maybe. And she brought that up because I told her that I worked in TV, and then clicking things ever together. It's like a puzzle piece. Your brain's a puzzle
Yeah.
piece. And so she was
I want to know. I
getting
want
bits
everybody.
and
I'm not
pieces out.
laughing at Cody, by the way. I am not laughing at Cody. It just.
No, it's just like the realization of like, yep, that makes sense.
Well, I can remember one almost fight we had was kind of along those lines, and I was like, Cody, this is not black and white. Why are you being this way? And it just ran so counter to how kind and open minded you are that I was like, I don't fucking understand. And I was getting more frustrated at you for being like this or this rather than like I didn't feel like you were thinking about whatever you were saying to me. I was like, no, this is not run. I didn't care that you disagreed with me. I care that you were only seeing yeah or not.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
she's
why I feel like it's here. You were like, no, it's this or this. I'm like, The fuck?
She said those exact words, and she was like, "So you see everything in black and white." Like that's and that goes to the extremes in
What
that like, oh my god, I just don't have like a stomach bug. I have colon cancer, stomach cancer, whatever it may be. Like there's no in between, like the skin thing. It could just be I'm getting older. That's what it is. No, it was I have skin cancer. So that's the extremes. There's no in between, even though the practical thinking is like, oh, it could be this, or this, which isn't bad. It's probably not this, but I go to the extremes. Same thing, black and white issues and control issues. And I was like, well, I guess it does make sense. And she was like, so you basically want everything, you have a worry about imperfection, that you want everything perfect, that you want everything, I guess, the essentially the way you feel like you're the only one who can make sure it gets done how it needs to be done, or to the best of its ability. And I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense, because in TV, I was in charge of everybody. I was in charge of the anchors. I was in charge of the reporters. I was in charge of everything. And doing that for 10 years, you build up a certain idea of how things work, how things run, and how things run the best. And so you get into that mindset of doing things. And then I guess over time, you build up that mindset of, well, this is the right way. And so anybody who's going to jump in here and be like this, you maybe just don't trust them. Or even if you do trust them, maybe, in my head, it's just like, it's not the way I would do it. Stepping back from it, it's might be like, well, if I would let them do it, it still probably would turn out fine and great. But in the moment, many times, and when she said this, it was like, oh yeah, that I do that. I didn't fully realize I do it to the level, but I feel like I do it in a lot
Well,
of
I mean,
things.
you are a trained professional, and as much as like I do tease Cody a lot about this, and you look back at our old episodes, I point this out to him because we've talked about it. But like you were telling me yesterday on the phone, he started talking more this last week, so we have gotten to talk a little bit, but I still haven't seen him until tonight. That you know you are so good at what you do, which is why I literally let Cody take the reins. Like I take him as a professional very seriously. But that doesn't mean I cave to, just because it looks the best that way doesn't mean it's overall the best that way. And, if I feel it looks more professional than it does personal, I'm going to say something, because this is a more personal platform. It isn't meant to be, we're not meant to be unreachable. But I have to remember, I have to communicate my thoughts and feelings in a way that is, one, respectful, because I'm not an asshole, like that kind of asshole. Like, because it's okay to disagree. It's okay to not, to say, hey, that's not really the message. I feel like that what's coming across over here is not, I think, what you're meaning, and
Yeah.
that was a fun communication. But you were telling me that it was hearing a professional from an outside perspective say it was really good, because they were probably, you and I've had bits and pieces of these conversations as a topic has happened, not, hey, Matt, this thing is bothering me and I want to talk about this as a whole. It typically comes up when your anxiety is bubbling up and you're like, I am having a bad day. Can we talk about the cats? Can we talk about food? Can we change the subject? Or sometimes you text and say, well, I want to talk about my anxiety, but not the medical part of it, and that's, or I remember one time you texted me, you're like, what do you know about this condition? And I almost didn't want to answer you. And I was like, why? Why do you want to know? Are you asking for formative, or is there, because you can accidentally enable your friend
Mm-hmm.
right off the edge,
Well, and that for sure with me, that is a thing, in looking things up, and that's why I need to stop. And Matt's told me to, Justin's told me to, everybody's told me to. Don't look things up, because what
Right, but
you'll
you
tend to
almost have
do,
to
especially
communicate.
if you have this health OCD-ish kind of situation, is you'll see whatever the worst thing ever is,
Like WebMD
and
is the worst thing ever for Cody, by the way.
your
Like,
anxiety then can create many of those symptoms. Like it caused me to have numb fingers and hands, and it can do all crazy
headaches,
things.
nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stress,
Almost
GI
everything.
issues. Yeah, anxiety will create that, especially in the short term. When you start having too much diarrhea or too much vomiting, you throw off the electrolytes in your body, which will create real problems. And
that's
I have
it.
usually you get
Snowballs.
about a week or two into it before you almost kind of like exhaust yourself, get a good night's sleep, eat a real meal or two, and then you almost like reset. But that's a really hard thing to do to your body, because it doesn't matter if it's real or not. And Cody knows that. Like, we've talked about it. It's that his body is processing this thing as if it was real, as if he was handed the worst diagnosis of his life. So he is experiencing nausea because he was just throwing up in the bathroom before he called me. You know, he is experiencing these GI symptoms. Those are very real. So it doesn't matter. Perception really is reality. So if his anxiety fixates on this particular, like, I think one day it was fixated on your nausea. And I didn't think we were going to record anything. I didn't think we were going to get anything done that day. And we're in this room. We're in our rooms. It's hot. It's gross. We're miserable. And Cody is sick. And he doesn't want to stop. I don't know how to. He's like, I just want to keep going. It'll keep my mind off of it. You're just miserable. You're ashen colored. I'm like, oh, God, what do we... I don't even know what to do. It's fine. It's fine. Let's just keep recording. Okay, everyone. Welcome to the next episode. Like, I mean...
Yeah.
Like, we're laughing now, but at the time I was really worried.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, now looking back the past month, it's like, oh wow, that was a crazy month. That was like, why? And that's the thing with me. I'm able to realize that, but in the moment I'm not. I think it was interesting in talking with the therapist, and all of these things were not necessarily surprising. I will say the control issue was a little surprising just initially, but as I think about it, I'm like, oh no, that makes sense. But all of this all puzzles and clicks together. All these reasons for my anxiety all are interconnected, and the control piece, you know, of me being controlling, and maybe a lot of the background because of TV caused that. But when it comes to health issues or other anxiety issues, there is that element of unknown. There's also that element of I'm not in control of this issue. If there is something wrong, or there isn't something wrong, or even death, I'm not in control of that at all. So all of it does connect in that, I'm out of control. I'm not in control of the situation. I'm worried of the unknown. So it was interesting to see. But I will have to say that, like, the control thing was like, initially it was like, oh my God. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, the story that I think most about the control is you texted David and I a story, and we both of us took Justin's side. It was when you guys were building the chicken coop, and Justin wanted to measure, and you're like, no, fuck it.
That's right.
And you wanted to do it your way, and I'm like, Cody, that is not how you build something. And you're like, it's fine. I think Justin might be a little frustrated, but I know I'm right on it. And I thought you were kidding at first. So I was like, oh, LOL. And I read it out loud to David. Now, normally in these playful situations, one of us is the Cody and one of us is Justin. In this case, we were both like, no, Justin's right, you little psychopath. What are you doing? What do you mean you didn't measure twice and cut once? And you're like...
And I was just like, well, okay, I'm not going to take y'all's information to...
That's exactly what you said too. You're like, I'm ignoring your reality and substituting my own. And off he trails. But honestly, we were going to do an episode this season. We'll probably have to wait till summer because we're at finals now for me and I'm like here. But where we have Justin on, and because I didn't know if you'd go for it. I didn't know if Justin would go for it. I'm really excited about that episode. We're going to have Justin do an episode with us, not live. I don't think we're going to put you guys through that. But we'll record it, and for Justin to be able to kind of talk about his side of what he sees. And because you guys only hear my opinion, and I'm just his friend like 1,000 miles away. Or I think I'm like, 1,500 miles away from you, something like that.
So far.
Getting Justin's kind of feelings and opinions, and he's known Cody a really long time, and we want to talk to him about what it's like being with the oldest living twink in history. So I think it'd be a super great insight.
I think it will be, because I think it's interesting, especially obviously tons of topics we can talk about, but we were talking about the anxiety thing. It's interesting because, like, I was asking him, like, when I started taking medicine, I was like, did you notice, like, because here's the deal for me, I'm in the moment, so obviously I can't say one way or the other, but
right.
As Matt has mentioned, like, he can tell, like, if something's wrong or my anxiety is spiking or when it stops. And it's interesting.
This
Would
is
be
like normal.
interesting to hear his
This how
thoughts.
you're being right now, like you're excited to talk, you're excited to share and be interactive. This is the Cody I see whenever we talk about projects, when we're recording, before we start recording, before TV Cody turns on. This is the Cody I am used to seeing. Or have you guys seen him get drunk on camera? You know, like we continue.
My
I'm sorry.
TV controlling behavior.
It's okay.
Okay, let's look at some of these comments because we've just been like
No.
talking a lot.
So yeah. So also, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We kind of jumped into this because this is the first time we weren't sure we were even going to be free today. I'm here because the school closed the building for Easter, so I'm actually home today.
So Chris says, going back, I try to be open about my anxiety and let people know when I'm having a lot of anxiety. Talking to other people seems to help get my mind off of it sometimes, but I have a really bad days, especially lately. Exactly.
Right. I'm not going to
And
share
then
too much because Chris and I talk about this and we have at length. I'm not going to talk about much because I don't want to accidentally put his own business out there because that would be super freaking rude. But it's, yeah, this is very much. I think Chris, you kind of go slightly different direction, but the tenacity of what gets in your head, you describe similar things that I think a lot of us, most of us, I think we're all just an anxious bunch right now, but that is, you describe similar things, you use similar words and lingo that Cody uses when he's talking to me about it. And to answer your question about the ghost behind me, David is sitting on the couch stretched out playing video games. Let's see you guys. So it's his 6'3" ass behind me moving blankets around. Oh, he heard that. He's got his noise canceling headphones on.
Johnny says it has become desperately apparent that you two are in dire need of a social media manager. With that said, I'll take on the role for a reasonable salary.
I agree.
Well, one day when we have that money.
Yeah. Yeah, Comcast does not pay us.
Keith says, hi guys, sorry I'm late. I had to get McDonald's. No judgment, please. Oh my gosh. So that's the one thing I haven't since I was anxious, I was changing the way I was eating and I didn't eat certain things. Matt has his McDonald's here drink. So I haven't
time in months, okay?
I haven't eaten like a lot of fast food stuff or even like eating out at restaurants. I was eating certain things at home and everything. So it's nice to kind of be now like going out and eating certain different things that are really delicious. So yes, McDonald's
I haven't
sounds
got to
good.
tell you, I love your hair like this.
Like this?
Like I love the color like so much. It's giving me very like I frosted my long hair in 2003 and grew it out, and I'm kind of living for it for you. Keith,
oh my goodness, I'm about to cut it.
To my knowledge, it goes hand in hand with depression. I have been on Wellbutrin for years. It's true. Keith is very open about his anxiety with us and in our house. It's a very open topic. Our mental health is, we talk about it openly because while Keith is here with us, while we finish nursing school and we're just here during this time period, we're helpful. We try to support each other as best we can. And, Keith had to have some dental work done recently. And I would love to have him on just to talk about how he doesn't remember the day because of the meds, because he had to have IV sedation. And he was hilarious all day.
I do think it goes hand in hand. Like I was saying, I didn't want to get out of bed. So I think I mean, I did not talk to my doctor necessarily. I did talk to her about this, but we didn't discuss it in deeply. But I would say that would be like a very slight, mild case of depression, and that I just didn't feel like doing anything, and I just like was like,
it's an ugly cycle.
Nothing was wanting. I didn't want to do anything. I felt down about everything.
I remember 3 years ago, I hit a brick wall. I literally shut down for about 3.5 weeks, and I didn't hardly move out of bed. I took video during that time, like when I started to come around a little bit. And I didn't know what to do with what I was thinking. I didn't understand what was happening to me. So I took a video, and I had recorded an assignment for class 3 weeks prior, right? Like the day or two before it hit. And the difference in my face, like my cheeks were really puffy and swollen. And I hadn't even been crying or anything. I just was so depressed. I had barely moved for 3 weeks. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to interact. And it was like this brick wall I'd slammed right into, and I didn't know what to do. And that was the final straw of me writing my resignation and deciding I had to make a change. Even if it crushed me financially, I was done. and I was not gonna be able to continue standard corporate life.
Yeah.
Chris says, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, depression, anxiety does affect your physical appearance. I do remember
Yes.
when I first moved here, I was good all summer, but in the fall, I had like the first bit of anxiety where I felt like a lot of pressure on my chest, and it lasted like weeks and never let up. And I didn't. Well, I thought it was something bad, but I didn't think it was a heart attack or anything heart related. I
Really?
apparently I always go to
I'm
no, I
actually surprised.
no, I thought it was like some
I would
kind
have
of
thought.
like I thought it would have been I was thinking it was like some kind of esophageal cancer or something. I always go to cancer apparently. Uh
Okay.
anyway, but at the time again I probably wasn't eating a lot. But Justin wait and Gabe I think remembers this too. And I think I'll have to pull some pictures and like post them or send them to you. But they always say that I look like I was just been doing drugs for like months because I had like really dark shadows under my eyes, and I guess I was just very like gaunt looking.
Right. Well,
Um,
you also people tend to stop drinking water and eating enough, and you start to dehydrate, and that will hollow you right out. You know, your
you turn
weight might
into
not
a
even
raisin.
change. Your weight might not even really change too much, more than 5-10 pounds. And for an adult, that's not really a lot. But when you stop drinking enough water and eating and drinking some of the right things, it just does terrible damage to you. Um, and Chris says, I've been seeing a new therapist every week, and she's been trying to help me. We're only 4 weeks in. I feel better, but a couple of days later, I'm back to 100%. I mean, it takes time. You know, it's, you got to think you're working through whatever you're going through didn't start yesterday. My grandmother always told me, like when I came out of the divorce, she's like, if it took you a year to fall in that hole, it's going to take you about 2 years to climb out of it. And it just seemed insurmountable. And that, that it went along with the depression of said divorce too, by the way. It was all remarkably tied together. But for me personally, what I found that worked, that once I kind of, like how you said you made that action plan, you kind of started to take that step. When I took those first few, and they were baby steps, it was like that first tiny bit of relief. It was like the first thing I had done in months that took away some stress rather than added a pile to it. It was like half step forward kind of thing, and no
Mhm.
steps back for the first time. And I was like, okay. And that was kind of then, in that 2 years, it didn't take 2-3 years, but as the momentum started going, as I started to get better and kind of find that confidence again. I mean, I have obviously had terrible days. I mean, there was a whole ass suicide attempt there. Like, things were really ugly at one point, but the momentum carried forward. Things moved, and that seemed to help weirdly more. Even if the day didn't go forward, it went sideways. I was like, well, at least it didn't go 10 step backwards, you know.
Yeah.
But it took a while for me to get that perspective back, because I would say it to myself, but I didn't feel it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think when we talk about anxiety, especially or any mental health issue, and when you're going to talk to a therapist, or even what some meds can do to help that situation, is you're basically having to like retrain your brain how it's working because you know like for me, if I've been having anxiety in some way or another since like second grade, that's as far as back I can remember being like getting anxious about something and it would make me throw up. Um, and that seems to be a pattern throughout my life in certain circumstances. That is a whole lot of time that my brain has been processing things a certain way. So when you process stress or you process anxiety or certain things that trigger that in a certain way, but you've been doing it all your life or many, many years, obviously now you're going to have to retrain your brain to be like, oh, when this
It's hard.
happens, I'm not dying, and it's a process
It's literally
that
like when you
takes
come out.
time.
If you've come from a family that, like a lot of us come from families that they they don't care that we're gay per se, but it's basically not talked about. But like all my cousins that are happily married with kids, they're just like they can do no wrong, and I'm just like the one they feel sorry for, and I'm like, hi, I don't have to wipe the ass of 3 kids that you don't even seem to care about. Yeah, I'm doing fine, thanks. But when
You just
part of
gotta
you
pick
is
up vomit off the
silenced,
floor.
right? When part of that's what my patients are for. When part of you is silenced, you are so acutely aware of yourself, but somehow in all the worst ways. And the people that should be supporting you are, without saying it even half the time, are a constant reminder that you aren't yourself 100% of the time. And when you can't be yourself 100% of the time, I think of it like we're like 60, 70% water, you know. Water will always carve a way through, and it's going to be itself. Whoever you are, no matter what you do, it's going to come exploding out at some point, whether it's screaming at somebody over Thanksgiving or walking off and never speaking to a certain person again. It just, who you are is going to be who you are. And when you're trying to overcome something like anxiety or something that is tangling you up, it's complete retraining. You know, you see people that, you know, quit smoking or have to lose a lot of weight from like medical reasons. They know their numbers are way up here. They know they're not healthy. They know they need to do something, but their body is still telling them, you know, they're competing with so many factors, and it does so
Hmm.
much, it can do so much damage to you, and it can take a while to overcome that, you know. And
Yeah.
I think we need more services in our country that encourage people to work through it, and that there is a brighter light on the other side of it. But how do you get there when you constantly just have people saying generic bullshit like, oh, out of your head, have you tried touching grass, you know, have you tried touching anything, bitch? You want to touch because, oh my god, shut the fuck, you know. That's like the things I think when people are saying their nonsense, you know. Like, I've absolutely told Cody, I've asked Cody, have you gotten to do anything lately? I don't mean go outside and touch grass, but I mean, what's your schedule looked like this week, you know? Like, you know, like he said, did Justin notice? I'm sure Justin noticed, you know. There was no question
Yeah.
when I've gone off my own deep ends, David has absolutely noticed. Like,
Uh,
uh
that's one of the things that my therapist said that I should try DBT. And so she basically asked me when I start having anxiety, what do I feel? What is the first initial thoughts? And I say like worry and scared. In the most recent instance. And she was like, okay, what is the opposite of that? And I was like, content, happy. And she was like, what makes you content or happy? And I was like, going outside, sitting down by the water uh, fall, or listening to the birds chirp, or working in the garden. She was like, okay, when you start feeling that, go do that. So like in my instance, she's like, do the opposite. So do something that makes you content, or do something that makes you happy when you very, very first start feeling those feelings, because then it may not take the anxiety away, but instead of like making scalding hot water with your anxiety, this will temper it, and you'll have lukewarm. It's still going to be warm, but it's not going to be scalding hot where you can't stand it anymore.
right,
So
you want to,
doing
you're
that
trying to get
opposite.
these things that trigger you down to like a normal, lots of things that trigger people that have anxiety trigger everybody. It's getting it back to that normal level of, oh, there's a spot on my arm, I should look at that, doctor says it's fine, cool, you know, and walking off, not fixating on it. It's not that
Mhm.
you don't want somebody to care about that thing. It's, if what you should care about it is between a 4 and a 6, it's bringing it down from a 12 to that 6,
Yeah.
because, you know, that's, and I think one of the things I've had friends have told me, they were like, I just don't want to worry about anything anymore, because they're so used to everything, you know, becoming a 9 or 10 or 12 out of 10. They have no relief. They don't sleep at night. They don't get, you know, everybody gets to that point. Everybody has sleepless nights where the daunting weight of their lives is crushing them. And it's 4 a.m. and you're like, oh my God, why did I say that in second grade? And, you know, obviously I'm speaking about something I said in second grade, by the way. This is, you know, we all do it. It's when
Yeah.
it's something to the point where it's interrupting your life, whether you're conscious of it or unconscious of it, is when, you know, like, you know, when it's becoming a problem for you, you're very aware of it. Like you said, rational mind says this is what's up, and the rest of you is like, okay, but have you thought about why? And then
Yeah.
he's off to the races. Chris, it sounds stupid, but I have anxiety when I push a buggy at Publix. Excuse me. And one of my assignments was to go to the store and push a buggy and think about why I'm having anxiety over this. And I mean, that's like a classic face your fears. And, you know, like Chris said, there's no worst case scenario about pushing a buggy through the store. And also, like in Chris's scenario, like in Chris's case, he lives on the island. I can't go home and visit Chris anymore. Like we all used to live there. This was a normal thing. And I've noticed that a lot of us that have anxiety, I think we've always had it. I just think when we all had healthy social connections back in the day, I think it helped keep us all in check, because sometimes sometimes you've told me that when you're feeling really stressed, you'll text me and we'll be talking about something totally random. And then later you'll tell me, I was just in a moment when I texted you, but after talking about something, it helped me kind of get back to the whole, okay, that was not that big of a deal. And I don't know why my brain was doing that. So I just tried to do something else. And I think when you have healthy social connections and a good, healthy social schedule, it helps you. It's like a healthy structure. It's not a from 9 to 5, I do this, this, and this, and this. It's going and doing healthy, fun things with your friends or yourself, and having those things that reaffirm that you are a good person and that you are doing things for yourself. And, you know, it's that day in, day out monotony that, you know, makes it worse. And then you start dwelling on, oh, fuck, why am I here? And then,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't have to be rational for it to fuck your day up.
Yeah, not at all.
I have your watch set up like this, but I have mine set up to let you know when my heart rate is higher than it should be. When my anxiety is high, it goes off a lot. Oh, Cody, want to tell them about why? Yeah, this was a great conversation. Do you remember when you got this?
Yeah, so I love
Do you remember
tracking
this
everything in my
conversation?
health. I love tracking everything in my health. I do
Yeah.
that. So when I guess thankfully, I don't know, when my anxiety gets up, my heart doesn't race. Obviously, some people do have that
Mine does.
more panic attacks kind of feeling. There's been periods where that's gotten there, but it hasn't been super, super extreme, thankfully, because then obviously that would be another thing for me to worry about, even though there's a reason. But yeah, I love tracking everything about my health. And I do think ultimately that is a very important situation. The Apple Watch is able to track things. And it is important because it does give you some trend lines. So over time, if you have a trend line of losing weight, it'll let you know. So if you know that you've not been doing something to lose weight, that might be something you talk with your doctor. Or if you see a trend line of your heart rate going up for more extended times, it'll tell you you've had that trend rate for more time. And those are important things. So I do love that. Keith
Yeah,
says,
when Cody got that, I was like, Cody, are you sure? That was one of the things you've done that I was like, is this a good idea? You're like, no, it's perfect to track. And I'm like, Cody, I don't know. I was really worried. I think that's one of the few things you've done that I was like, this can't be good. I remember reading the text out loud, and David was like, is that a good idea for him? Does, does Justin know he's done this to himself? Like, will this help him or stress him out? Because obviously you want to know these things, but at the same time, can it accidentally trigger you into a fixation, which could trigger an episode, which vital signs
yeah,
it can be a slippery slope. And of
it
course, out of
definitely
concern, I
can.
was like,
Yeah, it definitely can. I think that's what's important about not looking the day to day, but looking at the trends. They also say this with concerning weight. If you're trying to lose weight, or if you're not, which can be a concern, look at the trends, not a day to day, because your day to day weight is going to fluctuate no matter what. It's the trends
right.
over a month, a trend over 2, 3, 6 months, etc. So I think that's important. Keith says males especially don't speak about it. That is true, and I think that's why it's important to speak out. And thankfully, a lot of younger generations are more open to speaking out. Chris says, I feel like a lot of times when I try to reach out to people to calm me down, they stop talking to me because they tell me I need to get out of my head, but it makes my anxiety worse in that situation. Yes, I feel you on that. I get that completely. I think that's why it's important. And this isn't going to be everybody that you speak with or anybody you think that you're close with. There will be those handful of people, though, that you will learn over time that you can trust and that who won't say those certain things. That's why I talked about in that episode that we released earlier in this episode, in that initially I was concerned that I was bothering people or whatever it may be, or certain things they would say back to me might be weird, or I might take them a different wrong way than they may have wanted, or whatever it
Right.
may
That's an
be.
important thing to note. Like,
But over time, you'll find that core group, a core group of people, a few people here and there that you will learn to trust. That's not everybody, because everybody is different, and some people are just horrible people. And some people also just don't understand. Some
right.
people don't understand what they're saying is even going to maybe trigger you in some way that is a negative way. They may feel like they are helping you, and that's just kind of one of those things. And that's also because we don't speak a lot about mental health. So some people
So a
just
lot of
don't
times people, the only
understand.
time they have an experience with it is when it's the other person's experiencing it to the point where it's bubbled up to the surface so harshly, like so hard, so badly that it's just spewing out, and they're like, "Where the hell did this come from?" Because they don't have any idea how people sometimes aren't as good of a friend as they think they are. And some people aren't as good of a listener as they think they are. And some people aren't as good of a communicator as they think they are. And I would absolutely consider myself guilty of all not being as good at those things. But because I know that, I always ask Cody after, like, we've had a conversation, like, how did you interpret, like, I'm here to help. Am I listening right? Did I hear you right? Like, I ask Cody, am I understanding this is what's bothering you right
Mm-hmm.
now? It's called reflective. It's being reflective. And sometimes in the moment when I've responded, if I'm still not sure, I was like, this is what I meant by that. Did I understand what you're telling me? And sometimes just getting Cody to, my own dumbassery is getting Cody to explain in detail what he means, not because I'm being a pain in his ass, but because I maybe don't understand because we're on text message. And sometimes when you can explain it to me in detail, it makes you think of other things that you're like, oh, wait. So that's not me being therapeutic. I'm just a little dumb, and I was trying to understand, and he ended up helping himself. I was just the wall. I was
Yeah, I
just like
mean,
the wall.
that's the other thing when you are talking to friends and whatever that I've learned. And initially I didn't, but over time, as I have talked to people, developed things, learned things about my anxiety, what best works, what doesn't work, etc. It's like, y'all aren't professional therapists. And so, you're not always going to say the right things or do the right things or respond
Right.
the way. And even a therapist may not respond the way because they're wanting to get something out of you and see what is causing that root issue. So yeah, it's a crazy thing. Keith says, I convinced myself that I had ovarian cancer. Thanks, WebMD. Yes, I mean, right? I have a hangnail. I think it's something.
Clearly a hysterical pregnancy. You know, like what I saw a meme that made I don't even think I sent it to you, Cody, because I was afraid of setting you off because I think you're having a bad day. But it
Yeah.
was like, oh, I have a headache, WebMD, and it'll be your last, and you're like, you know. But
Keith also Keith also says, I'm glad you guys are tackling this topic. So many people are scared to talk about depression and anxiety. It's so much more common than people realize.
I think that talking about mental health and mental illness, a lot of times it's used as an insult, and even like Cody jokes around about it a lot with me. But there are days when the episode is happening, it's not a fucking joke. But him being like, when I've noticed large periods of improvement though, because I do remember at one point it was just like episode after episode, like mini episodes. So
Mm-hmm.
between the skin episode and last month, that's like 3 years, 2 3 years.
Yeah.
um and
Then we
so
went
when we
through COVID, which was a big thing that I didn't
yeah,
get any
okay.
anxiety.
Gosh. Oh, there was one, yeah, the donut episode. I was like 12 over
Well,
10. Yeah,
I
uh-huh.
I wasn't anxious about that. I was like pissed off.
Right, you were being ridiculous. And that wasn't your anxiety. You were just being ridiculous, and I was over it. um it was quite a day. It was quite
I
the day.
finally had donuts though. I haven't had donuts since like January. I finally got donuts. By the way, everybody, Krispy Kreme donuts. If there's a Krispy Kreme donuts near you, every Wednesday for the next 3 weeks, they're going to be the price for a national average of gas, which this week was $4.44. But I already had some points, so I only had to pay like $2.61 for a dozen donuts. And normally they're like $15. So if you want donuts and you have a Krispy Kreme every Wednesday for the next 3 weeks, they're going to be super cheap. I loved them. I was finally glad that I had donuts again. Um, yeah, I think yeah, it's a thing that isn't talked about a lot. Again,
We're
like
taught not to
I'm
talk about it. We're taught to internalize it. We're taught, and I'm sure this is some personality issue of mine. This is not growth. This is just I have a detached personality, and it's probably from trauma and damage. And I should probably talk to a therapist about that too. But
well,
my brain doesn't
better
allow
help,
me.
Matt. A free month,
My brain
thanks to
doesn't
Justin
allow
Bieber.
anymore to not do my best to be my authentic self 100% of the time. And that can be problematic. Cody's like, yes, it can be. But at the same time, part of that is I do my best to encourage everybody around me to be themselves at all times. That doesn't mean if I know something's up, I'm not going to pry it out of you. That's not what I mean by it. It's that being that person that if you want to talk about it, if by all means, but if you don't want to talk about it, don't take it out on me. You know,
Yeah,
if you
I
can't
think
talk right now, don't. But don't. But then if I say, okay, well, if you don't want to talk about that, do you want to watch this movie? And then you yell at me, we're not doing that either.
um,
Like,
like I said, I think that's one of the things younger generations, like our generation and generations below us, younger generations, are definitely more open to mental health, speaking out about mental health. Um,
well, they
as
see it
we're
lived out on TV. They see it live. Whereas the older parts of our generation, until we were like 15 or so, 15 to 18, we saw what our family showed us on the news, or if we watched the news independently. Then social media hit when you and I were like 18, 19, and we started to see how much happens in the world and how all these piddly things that people say were a big deal weren't, and that your own health, mentally, physically, emotionally, how much it matters. And when people are out of balance on that, they literally lose their shit. They will literally
Mhm.
just go off an edge, and it's so hard for them to come back. So the focus on taking care of yourself in a healthy way has really, I think, long term will be a really good thing, because the generations behind us, I think, are going to be more connected. Whereas we have a disconnect from Gen X, we have a big disconnect from the Boomer generation. Um, where
Those dang
behind,
boomers.
uh,
Yeah,
exhausting.
I think so because just as your normal health is important and mental health is important, um, to keep an eye on and keep aware of certain things. I do think it's talked about more, like you said. You had like Selena Gomez talking a lot openly, and so that allows younger people to be like, oh. Well, she pretty much has everything if you're looking at it from the outside, but she still suffers from the same thing that I am,
Right. She
so there's a
suffers from health
relation.
conditions, and seeing very like A-list celebrities not just talk about, oh, I remember some celebrity released something about how she's been handling quarantine, and it was like day 4, and I'm like, shut up, okay?
Vanessa
But like,
Hudgens.
I think it was Selma Blair talking about how she has MS, and she still made public appearances. She didn't hide. She was very open
Mhm.
about how she went through chemo to see if it would help her, all the treatments, and how it cost her hair and her health, and how bad she feels, and she falls. And this is somebody who has access to all the resources you can imagine that we typically don't. And she's still expressing, how she struggles with her voice and talking and interacting, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in a way of kindness, not, well, it sucks to be y'all, I got the money for this.
Yeah.
She's open about how, no, you have to take care of yourself. And I think when you see people that are on a large, I don't like idolizing celebrities. I don't think it's a healthy thing. But looking to somebody for a good example can be a really good thing. So seeing people that are well off saying, no, this does affect me too. They're acknowledging that they have everything and they have resources, but that doesn't make their brain think they're perfect. Some people do. Some people really are egomaniacs, but you know, it affects and can affect everybody. PTSD can come for everybody. I think in our country, people largely think of PTSD as uh, the aftermath of war, because our country has been openly at war for God, like most of our lives, and so people they don't think about it as recovering from an abusive relationship or traumatic family relationships. If all you know is being pushed under your family's thumb, and then suddenly you're 25 and you're like, I can make this decision, you're going to feel sick to your stomach when you go out at 10:30 at night, because you're thinking you're going to get in trouble because you've lived that way your whole life. It's going to resurge and the trauma will come back, and you're fine then because you're processing it. But when everything's calm, it will come for you again. And learning how to deal with it, I think the younger generations and behind us are going to continue doing better, because they're seeing that they don't have to be their parents. They don't have to be their grandparents if they don't want to be. It's okay to be your own person.
Well, and the thing is, it's ultimately you're not alone. Like I mentioned, like there's so many people that
8 billion people
afterwards
is experiencing it.
Yeah, that afterwards I've seen that take Zoloft on a regular basis, and it's just part of their life, and it's helped them tremendously. So like I would just now, I've said this before, but then I didn't actually then do it. I always said it, but I didn't do it. In that, going to talk to your doctor about getting some medicine to help with your depression or anxiety, and then going to speak to a therapist about your anxiety or depression or whatever it may be, and have them help you work through the process of that, I think is really important. Don't be ashamed of it. It's totally normal. And like I'm telling you, when you start doing it and you start feeling better, and then you look back and you're like, wow, should have done it a long time ago, but at least I'm doing it now.
Right.
But
It's
you will
better to take a
see.
step today than worry about whether you should have done it 30 years ago. Everybody has that thing. They're like, oh, wow, I should have done that a
But
long
I'm
time
telling you,
ago.
do it because it's amazing and it makes you feel so much better. Chris says, I always feel like I'm bothering people. Another thing my therapist and I are working on. Yes, Chris, like I said, that's I used to feel that way so much. It's only been in the last like 3 years or so that with like Matt and Justin and Gabe, that I have not felt that way. But before that with them, I did. And it took time, and it just took a lot of time for me.
Yeah, and it only even came up because I noticed you were like dancing around a subject or something, and I'm like, would you spit it out? What's going on? Are you okay? And you're like, I feel a little anxious. I was like, all right, join the club. Let's do it. What's in your head? And because I don't ask how you are to hear the wind blow, I I want to know. And Chris has experienced this with me, that, and he's expressed the similar concerns that he feels like he's bothering me. And I've told him in private and publicly that, you're not bothering me. And he's like, all right, buckle up. I'm like, sir, I've been ready for this right since I was born. You're fine. But it's reassurance, because I need it too. I am no different. I require the same thing from y'all, even though you guys provide it to me in different forms. Because you guys have probably experienced, if you try to comfort me in the way I talk, if you try to talk to me the way I talk to you guys, that you guys prefer, I'll just freak out at you, because I'll be like, you're not listening to me. And I will tell you that you're not listening to me, So everybody's different. Cody's like,
You're like,
and
yes.
I can just see Keith sitting at his keyboard right now, staring like, yep. But yeah, but no, you're never, and like, to me, you guys are never a burden. And like
I always say to people, if you want to talk to me about anxiety, and if like anybody can talk to me about anxiety, and I will listen to them, and you won't bother me at all. But for my friends who are close friends, and if they talk to me about certain things like that, I'm like, yeah, you're not bothering me. First of all, if you're going to try to get rid of me with your telling me about your anxiety, it's not going to work. You're going to have to do a lot more to get rid of me, because you're kind of stuck with me. So you're probably going to want to get away. You're probably like, no, I don't want you anymore. And I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah, like, I am not at all stressed by that. But then when the one girl in class wanted to come study, she goes, I'm not really a cat person. I was like, then you don't need to come over. And then later, like 2 hours later, she's like, no, it really doesn't bother me. I'm like, that's fine. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. So, y'all are fine. Don't you worry. Just don't insult my girls. And the classmate is not allergic, by the way. She just wanted to make a point of saying that, and I was like, well, I have a point to make too.
Oh my gosh. Well, everybody, we went like 2 hours today, but normally
Right.
do an hour,
But it was nice seeing
obviously.
everybody.
Yes, I'm glad everybody is still here, and we're still here. We're new episode will come out on Wednesday, the anxiety episode. We will, like I said, we're going to do an update to that anxiety episode in which we kind of already talked a lot of it about here, actually. But we'll
That is
talk
true.
with Justin.
Well,
Well,
this is the way more updated one.
yeah, this is the episode we were going to do as a sequel, but we just did it. You'll see the prequel on Wednesday. Before I had the
It's
anxiety
gonna be
episode.
like a Marvel scene. Like if everybody waits like 30 seconds after our credits, you'll see like some little scene that's like somehow the trailer for it.
And then we will probably in the summer or the end of this spring season, we'll have the episode where Justin and we'll talk to him about like the anxiety and living with me and dealing with me. That I'm not a bothersome person, but I'm here. Maybe bothersome in other areas, not concerning my anxiety.
Yeah.
But I will say we were talking about being in control. We're redoing the garden area. We're building a section building with wood, and he told me to send him the dimensions because we're building like a like basically like a triangle, but not like a normal like triangle with equal sides or equal what is that called, degrees. And so he said send me the dimensions and I will tell you what degree you need to cut each angle. Well, I went ahead and put one part up, and then I sent him the things, and he sent me the degrees, and then I couldn't cut it that way on the saw because it was like 70 degrees, and the saw only went to 45 degrees. So then I kind of just like did something myself, and then came out to help me, and he was like, I was like, yeah, I already cut this, but this is this. It's like I was like, this is not how my brain works. I'm not going to draw this out. I'm just going to cut it and do it. And that's what happened. Like Matt was talking about with the chicken coop the other time. The way I do things, I just do it and see it and cut and go. We actually have a neighbor across the street who they're kind of redoing the front of their house. And he's like, yeah, I just kind of going with it. I was like, oh my God, me and you. Yes, this is how we do it. I'm very, very visual. I'm just like, when I built the other chicken coop, it was just like,
I want to point out that
I
he's
just did it.
visual and did it wrong. He visualized, he did it wrong.
No, I cut it perfectly. I just did it a way that like I didn't like measure it out beforehand. I put one post, cut it, decided how I wanted to do it, laid the piece of wood, drew a line, cut that. Maybe the other way would have been easier. I don't know. Again, the saw didn't go.
Okay. You didn't do what you kind of described. I was thinking like you full on went, yeah. I was like,
no. I just didn't. Like, I don't do things beforehand. Like, I won't draw them out and be like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. I just kind of start doing it and be like, second step, okay, this needs to be this degrees. Let's figure out how are we going to do that? Where are we going to cut it? I do different steps, I guess, as opposed to like, okay, let's plan this out. This is going to be 12 inches, 1 foot, certain degrees. Anyway, so my little control issues, I guess, took over. That was before I knew about the control issue, though. Anyway, everybody, Chris says, love you guys. I'm glad we talked a lot about this. Everything will be okay. Yes. Again, Wednesday, everybody, the prequel episode of anxiety.
And we'll get an episode recorded with Justin soon. My finals are done on May 10th. So I might not be back until after that. I have some exciting news, but I have to share it with Cody after we're off because we got to stop. It's been 2 hours.
I know. Also, the other thing, we haven't talked about so many things because everything, and you've been busy. I've been in bed. But like, there's new Marvel shows out. Moon Knight, everybody. Watch Moon Knight. Second season of Upload is up.
What? Oh, damn it.
Yeah, I've only watched 2 episodes.
I need to finish All of Us Are Dead. and then I can get to that. But I can't do that until school is over. I've got 3.5 weeks. Um,
So much,
anyway,
everybody.
we'll talk about it. We'll create some new shit.
So everybody, Wednesday, listen to the episode. YouTube version will be up and audio version everywhere you get your podcast. But until then, everybody, we hope you all have a great weekend. I'm gonna go get a burrito because it's Friday night. Tomorrow we're gonna go wine tasting. The first time I had wine like in a long time. So yeah. So everybody, have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.